Hello and welcome back to Jenny's Test Kitchen. This week I thought that we would try something just slightly different. I've noticed a really nice trend in some cookbooks recently where they include some maybe menus or suggestions at the back of their books, and I wanted to try some of these out for quite a while, so I thought that we could do that in this video. So one of the best ones that I've actually come across is in this book, Salt, Fat, Acid, Heat, which some of you may know through the Netflix series, or by following Salmon Nosrat on Netflix, or by having the book yourself. I've talked about this before, that the book is amazing for learning the basics of cookery, and it's something that I use all the time for reference. And I did notice actually that at the back of her book she has something called cooking lessons. So she has something where she can talk about, you know, if you want to learn about the basics of acid or the basics of using salt in your food, you should use these specific recipes. She even has a knife skills one, improvising with leftovers. So that's pretty good in my opinion. But she has a suggested menus page, and I thought that would be a really nice idea to do a whole video on, and I chose her summer supper one, which sounds absolutely delicious, and it is rocket with lemon vinaigrette, conveyor belt chicken, cherry tomato confit, grilled corn on the cob, and strawberry shortcakes. She's written this with little amendments for how to do each of these by cooking on the grill. We're obviously not going to go do that because I live in a tiny flat in London where we do not have a barbecue, and we're also going to omit the corn on the cob because I haven't been able to get any for this video, but everything else we're going to do, so I'm really excited. Let's get cracking. All the components for this menu are nice and quick and pretty much straight to the table, apart from the shortcake. So I wanted to do that first. So you can see that I'm chopping some butter into very fine cubes here, and they are going straight into the freezer because they need to be as cold as possible according to the recipe. I've also got some double cream here, and I don't know why, because I actually had to weigh out the buttercream, so that's just a complete misnomer, so just ignore that. I am actually not entirely sure that we have a real British equivalent to a shortcake. The only thing that I could kind of think it was very similar to in texture was kind of scone-like. So if you're trying to think of what this might be, it was a very creamy and delicious and rich scone. Obviously a bit smaller and flatter. This is me just adding the chilled butter to the dry ingredients, which was flour and sugar. And you're kind of just doing this as slowly as possible. I had to really resist the urge to really chuck this all in at the same time. Just be as patient as possible. If you don't have a stand mixer, you can absolutely do this with a hand mixer. It just might take a little bit longer and a little bit more patience, because I was kind of lucky that I could kind of just leave this to do its own thing. I think what you're looking for here is that sandy texture. You can kind of see that lovely golden sand, and we can kind of take it off. And then the idea is to rub the last lumpy bits of butter into that mixture just with your hands, again making sure that your hands aren't particularly warm. And then we can add the buttercream, which has again been chilling in the freezer, so we're expecting that to be super cold. And we're also going to add in some double cream as well, so you're going to see that that's got a slightly creamier texture, colour, sorry, not texture. And then we're going to mix that together, and it's just going to make kind of like a shaggy dough. That's what the recipe described. I was really worried about that because I didn't really know what to expect. This is something that I would say is a little bit different from other recipe books. The Salt, Fat, Acid, Heat book is very minimal in terms of pictures, so you kind of just have to go on instinct, which is a bit of a worry if you're a first time baker of any of these items, which I definitely was to shortcakes. I didn't really know what I was looking for in terms of consistency here. I didn't know how much to mix this. I just went for minimal because I knew that I didn't want to overwork it. I didn't want to be, forming any gluten here. and then I could tip it out onto the counter, so you can see how you can kind of still see the cream and the buttercream within the flour there. I think that's what you want. So I just tipped it onto a well floured surface here. And then here's another kind of unique thing about this recipe as well, is that it's very specific that you shape the dough with your hands. And I was like, what the hell? But it's actually quite satisfying. Again, so you shape it out into an oblong, and I had to really resist the urge to knead it here as I would with bread. I had to kind of not overwork it. So here I am shaping it into an oblong that I could then roll out into a nice shape. But you don't really roll it out until the last minute. But you can see how springy and light that dough is, and it was such a nice texture. And again, you don't really want to get your hands too involved here because you've spent so much time getting that coldness in from the butter and the cream and the buttercream, so you really don't want to be doing that. The next step here is to make sure that you can roll it out, and then the recipe specifies that you need to be folding it 3 times. Again, no pictures, no specifics, so I was a bit confused about which way I should be folding this. I kind of just improvised. I've never watched someone doing this, and here you will see my first difficulty, that I had a relatively well floured surface and it was crumbling, which was fine, but there was a little bit of me that was like, oh no, I've ruined the whole thing. And then you can see that I fold it the other way here, which again, I didn't really know if that was okay. I was just kind of guessing, and the recipe didn't really specify anything here. You then shape it again and roll it, and the recipe says that once you have a smooth top, that's when you can stop folding. I'll be honest, because the dough was so wet, I really struggled to know when I had that smooth top, just because the rolling pin was sticking so much. So that would be my first criticism, is that because there was very little guidance and because the recipe is so bare, there was several mini panics for me here. I would also say that the one thing that I would do differently here as well is that the recipe was specific about how thick the pastry should be, and I was just like, oh, I'll eyeball it, knowing that I know how thick 3 centimetres is. I think next time I would have a ruler to hand just so that I can check that, because I think I actually did this a little bit thin, and then I didn't suffer for it, but I feel like we could have had thicker shortcakes, and my rolling skills were the reason why we didn't. So you can see here how you kind of have still got some dimples on the top, and you know, it's not the smoothest I've ever seen, and I kind of just have to make a decision here. So in for another fold. I sped this up because you don't need to watch the whole thing again, but I was getting a little bit impatient and a little bit worried that maybe I'd done the whole thing wrong here, but I went in for the last time and it was smoother on this time, but again, I just wish I'd had that ruler to hand so I could just check I was doing everything right. I also think I was stressing the dough a little bit here by rolling in different directions. And then I've just got a cutter, and you can't really see, but I'm just scraping it through some dough and wiping it off in between, because the recipe specifies that this is a good way to make sure that your shortcakes aren't sloping at the sides and they're basically tall all the way around, which I actually thought was quite a nice tip. Some of them are sticking at the bottom though, so that's not ideal. I got a lot of shortcakes out of this recipe, really nice amount, and I'm just going to show you the layers because that's what you're building up when you're doing this folds, and I got a really nice fluffy shortcake out of this recipe. Next we're on to what she calls conveyor belt chicken, The reason it's called this is because she thought of the recipe, described it to her friend, and her friend said that she would literally love a conveyor belt of this chicken straight into her mouth, which I think is quite cute. So the idea here is that you get chicken thighs with the bone in and skin, and you debone it yourself and then fry it off in a really, really hot skillet. So really, really quick cooking, obviously seasoned with salt. I'm not the best butcher, and this is probably my first experience deboning a thigh like this, so I was very much feeling my way. Again, I did search through the recipe book because it's quite a good reference for things like this. I searched through the recipe book for some more guidance on how specifically to do this, or things that I was looking for in terms of texture, markers that I was looking for, but I kind of just had to feel my way. So I just had a really, really sharp knife, and I was just looking for those tough tendons next to the bone, and using the bone to kind of like place it out here. You can see it comes away relatively easily with my knife, but I don't think I particularly enjoyed this, and I don't think I was very adept at it, so I definitely want to get better at this. I might do a video on like instructional books that help you with butchery, because I definitely want to get better at this, having looked at this again. So I'm just speeding through this, but I just did the exact same on all 4 thighs, just removing those bones and just making sure I get rid of any kind of bristly bits. And I also seasoned really well with kosher salt on both sides. You can't really see from the way that I've filmed this, annoyingly, but there's a really great skin on the underside here, which would make for a really nice bit of frying. So here we come to making the tomato confit. So in this bowl, or in this baking dish, sorry, I've got a bed of basil, quite a lot, and some garlic, so there's 4 garlic cloves in there, and I also have quite a few cherry tomatoes. I was really lucky that this came in cherry tomato season, so I plucked a few from the garden as well, which was delicious. And then I'm just bathing it in extra virgin olive oil, and then season with salt and pepper, and then you kind of lightly mix just before it goes in the oven. Then next I want to just prepare the strawberries for the strawberry shortcake, and it is super, super simple. You just want to cut those with a really sharp knife again. Don't worry, I have washed it since I did the chicken, don't worry. And I want to macerate this in sugar, just to make sure that those lovely juices come out, and you will have a really, really gorgeous natural strawberry sauce, and there's no cooking required. So I actually think this was probably the easiest stage of all the recipes, and was just absolutely delicious. So here you can see I'm just adding the sugar, and you can kind of just measure that yourself and do it to taste, and then you mix it all together. And I remember thinking the first time I did that this was going to be awful, but you really only need to leave it for like 10 minutes before those really gorgeous velvety juices start coming out the tomatoes, strawberries, what am I on about? And it's really nice. Next I come to do a really simple vinaigrette for that rocket salad. So I'm just zesting some lemon into a bowl here. It's quite a lot of lemon zest according to the recipe, but again, trust the process. And you can tell I'm not the most adept at this. And then you do the juice of the lemon, just get that all in there. And and then we're going to go in with some white wine vinegar and quite a lot of olive oil just to offset the acidity of the lemon juice and the white wine vinegar here. It just makes for a really gorgeous vinaigrette. And then the last stage is to get a really chunky garlic clove and crush that and add it to the vinaigrette and just let that steep in the vinaigrette before you serve, obviously after seasoning with salt and pepper. You don't actually add the garlic clove to your salad, you kind of take it out just before you add it to the salad. I think it just adds this like really gorgeous garlic note to the vinaigrette, and it really does work. What I quite liked about this was that you can make quite a lot of this and then just transfer it to a jar so that you can just make enough for the week, which is really nice. I have here a really hot skillet, and I just added the chicken skin side down, and you can see the skin kind of crisps up almost instantly in that hot oil, and you're hoping for that initial browning to happen on the inside. I have a steel press here which I just add just to make it a bit easier to get the weight on there. She recommends that you could use a smaller skillet or even a can of tomatoes with some foil on top just to get the weight on top, and then you're looking for that crisp on the skin, which was so delicious when you're turning it over. I've obviously left this for like 10 minutes. I obviously haven't left it for like 10 seconds as I have in the video, and then you just want to put that press down again. This gets insanely hot, but it's worth it. I think this is probably some of the nicest chicken that I've had. That crisp was really good. It was super moist. The flavour was really good, not too salty. I think the only thing that would have made it better was if I'd just done like a nice little pan sauce. If I'd like taken off some of that fat, done like a really nice pan sauce, it would have been really great. But yeah, that's the only recommendation that I would have done differently. And then I just go in with 2 more, and you can see that the pan is so hot by this point, it like literally shrinks instantly. I'm just dreaming of how nice that chicken tasted now. So here we have the tomato confit with some bread rolls, which was really lovely, and some chicken, and the salad with the vinaigrette. A really delicious meal, finished with the strawberry shortcake and vanilla cream. An absolutely delicious end to the week, and highly recommended. Thank you so much for watching. Please do like and subscribe, and I can't wait to see you again soon. Thank you, bye.